So I have a mate who has an apartment and it's got this beautiful view. And with that apartment, he's got this little deck. Now, what's a perfect thing you can put on this deck? Well, how about we put a bar here where you can sit, relax and have a beer? So join me and watch this old man lift this big slab multiple times and strain like hell to make a bench. I'll show you how to clean up a live edge using a spoke shave. I'll show you how to clean up epoxy using a scraper card. And I'll even put in adjustable legs for you. So join me as we build a bar for this lovely little deck. Voila! Look at that! So I fired up the old man iPad here and we measured things up, got some accurate dimensions. These were quite important so it would fit into the space that we had to work with. And this here is a slab of microcarpa. This was supplied by my mate for his bench top. And this is predominantly what we're going to make the top out of. The idea here is we're going to make a flat bench with a back on it. So, and we're going to make it all out of this one slab. So the first thing we have to do with this is square the ends off. Now how do you square something off that doesn't have a straight edge to run a square on? Well, the first thing you've got to do is find the center of it. This is what we're doing here. We'll run a center line down the middle of the board, or a straight line down the middle of the board, and then we can use that to square everything off on. So you can see here, I can now run the square onto that center line, that straight edge, and use that to then square the ends off. Once I've established that square end, I can then trim it. And then we'll have a nice square end. And once we've established one square end, we can then flip the whole bench around and cut it off at final length. I figured out that by opening the second door in the shed, it makes it a lot easier to turn this tabletop around. So once we get this turned around, I now want to create the backboard. So to do this, we're going to cut a section off. You see here I've marked the section I want to cut off. Now my biggest problem here is I need a straight edge to cut this line. Now I haven't got one that long, so I got a board that is my longest piece of board I had. And then I'm here planing the edge dead straight so that we've got a beautiful straight edge that we can then run the saw along and cut a nice clean straight edge onto the top. And with a few runs through with the plane, we get a lovely straight edge. This edge then I will fix onto the top using some clamps and braces. Clamp it onto the top. And we can now use that to run the saw on and cut the back off. You can see here with the tension on the wood closing up the saw cut, I had to stop the saw and put wedges in to keep the saw cut open. And as I progress down the cut, I keep repeating this process so that we didn't have the saw jamming up. I'm trying really hard to make this cut as clean as possible. And once I've got to the end of the board, I'll leave everything in place and then I'll very gently lift out the straight edge and shift it down. Once I've got this down where we want it, I'll then reclamp it and finish the cut. And now we have created the back of our bar. Now all I want to do is clean up the saw cut so it's dead flat. Now I figured out a way to do it. I took my straight edge and with some double-sided sandpaper I applied that to the straight edge. Now using this I was able to work the edge of the saw cut so that I could sand out all the cut marks to make it dead flat. And by doing it with this long wide straight edge, it made sure that it was dead flat and dead square, and I didn't create any humps of hollows. I could have tried doing this with a plane, but with all the knots and twists in the timber, there was a good chance I'd tear it out and it wouldn't be any good. But I found that this way was very successful and worked really, really well. Excellent. Nice. Nice fit. Screws in that and it'll pull it all together. Good. Excellent. I want to put in some big lag screws, 100mm lag screws to hold the backboard on. So the first thing I want to do here is just drill some countersink holes for the heads. And then I'll drill through the top. And then I'll clamp the backboard on, and then I'll run through and pre-drill the holes onto the backboard. Take that off, finish drilling the holes for the screws, and once we've done that we can then put all the screws in. This worked great to pull any twists or cupping on the backboard and tied it all together. Pulled the joint really nice and tight, and will give it a lot of really good support. Eventually, once I've finished everything, I will glue it in and screw it in as well. So far so good. Backboard's looking really good, nice and tight. Next thing we've got to do is cut some notches out of the end. These notches are for these areas on the deck so that the bench can sit up against the rail and those notches won't hold it off. Now this was a bit dodgy, but I wanted to trim the knot off because it had a whole lot of smashed pieces on the knot. So just running the skilly through at an angle, we were able to trim most of that off. Next part is we had to clean up this impact wound on the slab. This is where it's been smacked. Not quite sure how, but it's how the slabs come. So what we'll do is through a process of chisels and spoke shaves, we'll clean out the cracked and fractured timber. And then blend it all together using spoke shaves. This is my little Stanley flat bottom spoke shave. I'll use this to remove the high spots. And once I've got most of that done, then I'll swap over to my little round bottom spoke shave and clean up the bottom of the cut. Once that's done, she's all nicely cleaned up and all that impact wound's been taken out. Now if you're looking to clean up a live edge, my personal opinion is get yourself a spoke shave. These are the most efficient, easiest ways of cleaning up a live edge on a slab. On some slabs it may not work, especially if you've got a really textured surface that you want to try and keep. But if you've got a live edge such as on this slab that you're looking to clean up, don't bother with sandpapers and grinders and that sort of stuff. Get yourself some spoke shaves and just clean them up with those. It just does a very good job, quick, easy, and you know, it's fun to use. Now on this there were some splits forming, so with a bit of PVA glue and I was able to work this into the splits. Once I'd worked enough glue in, I just took some masking tape and taped these up and the problem was fixed. You can see here, you don't need a fancy clamping system. Masking tape will give enough clamping force to push this all together and give it a nice tight joint so that when it's finally all done, you can hardly notice it. And while that's drying, we'll clean up with the rest of the live edge. The spoke shave does such a good job that it's only a quick run with the sandpaper after I've finished with the spoke shave, and it cleans up the edge lovely. Quick clean up with the scraper card and that's almost done. Next stage here, there's a bit of a knot in the bench. I want to fill this with some epoxy, so I'll get rid of the excess bark and rot out of that knot. Here I'm taping the bottom off. I'm going to use some West System 2-pot epoxy and we'll fill this knot hole up. I thought I'd filled it properly, but as you can see here, it wasn't completely filled up and I wasn't happy with this result. So out with the little carving tool and I carved out all the air pockets out of it and the air bubbles that were trapped in it. I carved out those areas, and then once I was happy with that, then we refilled that up with epoxy, and then that should give a far better result than what we had before. While we're letting that dry, let's build some legs. This is some more microcarpa here. We'll use these components to do 2 sets of legs, so let's process this timber for you. Now I want to make these legs with a 3-degree taper on the front of them. So you can see here on the plywood here I've drawn a leg pattern. The 2 pieces I've just cut are the backs of the legs. And then now I'll proceed in adjusting the angle on the drop saw and cutting a 3-degree angle and cutting the rest of the components for the legs. These are just going to be butt joints, but because of the weight of the bench all going downwards, these are all going to work perfectly fine because there's no stress pulling these legs apart. It's all downward force, which means by butting them together with some glue and screws, they should be perfectly strong. I pre-sanded the inside of the legs because it's just a lot easier than doing it once they're assembled. Now we'll do some pilot holes for the screws, which I'll mark out with marking gauge. And then the first thing we want to do is a countersink, like we did on the top. So the head of the screw will sit underneath the edge. Once we've got the countersink, we'll then take it over to the drill press and drill the pilot holes. Once we've got all the pilot holes, next step is just a bit of glue and screw it all together. We'll let these dry overnight, and then the next day we'll clean them up with a little hand plane. We'll clean all the faces up, so not only the ends but the inside faces will clean to make sure they're all nice and smooth. This is quite important for the next stage, because what I want to do is use the router and put a big chamfer around the inside and outside, and if we haven't cleaned up these lips, the router will jam on those lips and you know, could skip or dig in. So it's important that we smooth all these edges off, so at this stage that we're doing now, the router runs nice and smooth and we have no problems. Then it's just a bit of quick work with the chisel just to square up these corners and make it all look nice and crisp. Well, the legs are looking good. Now it's back to the top. I'll clean up that excess epoxy we've got on the tabletop with a scraper card. Once again, this is the most quick and efficient way of doing it. You can run sanders and all sorts of other things to try and clean this epoxy up. But I find the best way is a nice sharp card scraper, and you just take the X off very quickly and very efficiently. And then after that, everything gets sanded. So I went from 120 to 180. You can see here I've put some pencil marks onto the top, and then basically I just sand till those pencil marks go away, and then I process to the next grit. We didn't take it too high, didn't go up to 220, just up to 180. That was high enough. Now a bit of glue and we can actually put this backboard on permanently. So we'll get this lined up and we'll run the screws into it with a bit of glue and she'll be on forever. Next thing I want to do is attach the legs to the top, and to do that we're going to use wood lug screws. Here I'm drilling the holes for the screws bolts to go through. Once again, I'll countersink the top of the hole so the head of the bolt will sit below the surface of the leg. And then using my fancy expensive drill jig here to make sure the drill is held perfectly square, I'll actually drill the hole for the bolt to go through. No need for a fancy jig here. As you can see, I've just drilled a hole through a block, made sure that hole was drilled through on the drill press. Makes the hole nice and square and absolutely perfect. And it cost me nothing. From there, I clamped the leg into position. I made sure it was absolutely perfect in the spot I wanted it, and it was flush to the back of the bar. And once I was happy with that, I can then drill the holes through into the bench top. These I can then drill to final size. You can see the tape on the drill to give me the depth. I'll just chamfer the top of the hole, and then from there we can put in the nuts. Oh wow, oh no, that's solid as hell. Oh good, excellent. And we just repeated the same process for the second leg. But no, I was very pleased with these, worked very well. Next thing I wanted to do is put some adjustable feet on the bottom. So I'm now countersinking the first part of the hole for the foot. Once I get this deep enough, you can see I marked the drill head with a vivid. Once that's deep enough for the foot, we can proceed to then drill the next hole. This is the lip of the nut that's going to be glued into the leg. There's the nut there, and I'm just checking the depth to be right. Then after that, we have to drill the hole depth for the nut, and then I've set my gauge here at the hole depth I'm looking for, and I'm just checking the depth. Once that's good, we then can drill the rest of the hole through. Now I've made the decision that these probably would have been good enough just to hammer in, but I'm going to use epoxy to glue these in. You can see on the lug nuts on the bench top there, I used epoxy to glue them in as well, just to give the timber a bit of strength and holding power, so that it helps them stop from pulling out. So once we get a bit of glue in there, they're going to hammer this nut home. Now I put some wax onto the thread of these feet, and then I want to thread these on and leave them on while the glue's drying, just in case there's some squeeze out onto the thread underneath, and this will stop it all seizing the hole up. I'm going to coat this with some Sikkens. This is great stuff, wood preservative. It's an oil based. It's what I put on my gate build. If you want to see a really awesome gate build, have a look at one of my videos where I go through the process of building some big posts and a gate. But I used this stuff on it, and it is fantastic. Great wood preservative, especially for anything going outdoors. As you can see, it's looking really, really good. So that's the top done. Next big job is this had to be carried up 9 flights of stairs to the 9th floor. The best thing about it is I didn't have to do it.
Where did you get that?
Well, you guys are going to make it go viral.
Well, I was telling Ali on the way here, if it doesn't fit, then at night time,
We've got to pull it up with a rope, eh?
so there is a part of me that wants that to happen.
Just to get it. Yeah, man.
Shit.
That'd be cool, eh? Beautiful. Look at that.
Holy
I don't know what we're worried about. Well, I'm worried about whether it's going to fit.
I'll just be working.
There we go.
Hitting everywhere.
There you go. Nah.
That's awesome.
There you go.
Mate, you killed it.
Nice and solid.
What do you reckon?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Very talented, Wayne.
Thank you.
Amazing.
So that's it. Completed. Come up really good. Really pleased with the results. Really pleased how it came out. Lots of challenges in this one. New challenges especially. Getting the backboard on nice and flat. With a nice tight joint, that was a challenge. The 3-degree legs, that was a challenge. Cleaning everything up with the spoke shave, cutting the joins, making sure the measurements were right. That was my biggest worry was, had I cut it to the right length, had I cut it to the right size, was it going to fit? And it's actually fit really well and perfect. I like the feet on the legs. You can see it leaves a nice little shadow gap underneath the legs, as well as it keeps them off the ground and keeps them dry even though they all get wet. This will be a lovely place to sit, chill out, have a few beers, have a laugh with a few mates. My next job here is to build a cover for the air conditioning unit there, but that'll be another project. So thanks everyone for watching this far. I really appreciate it. If you like what you see, hit that like button, and if you like the content, subscribe. All right, on to the next project.